welcome to my channel. In today's video I'm going to be doing an Alocasia care day video, so if you are into Alocasia then this is definitely a video for you. I do already have a video on my channel where I show my entire Alocasia collection and also how I care for them, so I will pop that in the description below. But today I'm going to be going through each plant, just seeing if anything needs to be upsized, repotted, treated for pests. I know there's some spidermites hanging around, and also looking at some of my baby plants, some of the Alocasia I've grown from corms, and just seeing how those are getting on as well. And I will be talking about how I propagate those corms as well. But before we get into the video, hi, my name's Alexis and this is Wild Houseplants. I'm a houseplant enthusiast and I also work as a houseplant technician, which basically means when I'm not looking after my own plants, I'm looking after other people's. If you don't follow me over on Instagram or TikTok, you can find me there at Wild Houseplants. And if you do enjoy this video today, I'd love it if you hit that subscribe button below, because it really does help out my channel. Okay, let's look at some Alocasia. If you notice there's a plant missing, I just noticed how thirsty my peace lily was, and so I had to take it up to the shower and just give it a really good water because I noticed it was suddenly like drooping. Anyway, so the first plant we are going to discuss is this, which is my big Zebrina. You can see it here. I've had to put the camera on wide angle just so that I can get this one in shot. So again, I do have a very specific care video just on the Alocasia Zebrina, which I can also link. So if you're struggling with yours, I talk exactly through in that video how I look after mine and how I've grown this guy into this big plant here. So there are 3 plants in here, which is what gives it that big full look. And this plant lives in my living room, and I did actually add a grow light above it just recently. Alocasias can go dormant in the winter time. That is quite normal for them to do that. And because I don't want my Alocasias to go dormant, I do try to prioritize light for them by providing extra light through grow lights or putting them as close to a bright window as I can. And I just noticed that this one wasn't putting out any new growth. Again, not particularly unusual for the time of year with it being winter. So I decided to add a grow light, and since I did that, I have this new leaf here, and you can see it's also working on another new leaf in here. So definitely a good idea. I do also have a couple of leaves that are heading off a little bit. You can see that this one is starting to get a bit droopy and this one is yellowing. So I am actually going to cut these 2 off today. Now, you absolutely don't need to do that. It's just a preference for me, and there's always quite a lot of debate in the plant world about whether or not you should cut off yellowing leaves. Some people say, yes, cut them off because they're draining energy from the plant. Other people say absolutely no. Actually, when the plant, when a leaf dies off, it puts all the nutrients back into the plant to work on new leaves. So it's one of those. And for me, it's just a personal preference that I think the plant looks better without leaves that are looking kind of droopy. So I do cut them off. But like I say, do your own research and see what you want to do. Like, they absolutely don't look that bad at all. It's just kind of ruining the aesthetic of the plant for me. So I am going to cut them off in this instance. So yeah, these plants, like, as I say, at the moment, this plant has got a grow light coming from directly above it. So it is growing quite nice and upright. But if you do notice that your Alocasia is becoming a little bit droopy, then these stakes are fantastic. They are by far the most effective things I've found for supporting Alocasia, and I do use them on lots of different ones that I have, and I've got, like, they come in different lengths. So you've got small ones for baby ones, and this is, I think this is the tallest one they do. But I get these from Amazon, and again, I can link them down in the description. Now, the good thing is I know that this plant doesn't have any pests, because I do look at this plant very regularly, because it sits like next to my sofa. So I'm literally, while I'm watching TV, I'm always just having a little look out for it. But I do want to clean the leaves today because of course they do get dusty. So I'm just going to do that. And also I don't think I want to repot this plant at the moment. This plant lives in semi-hydro. It's in Lechuza Pond, and it probably will need a repot at some point, but it's pushing out a new leaf, and I don't generally like to repot when alocasias are putting out new leaves. I'm just going to see if I can lift it up a little bit without hitting the ceiling. Yeah, there are some roots coming out the bottom, and I can see there's some corms as well, but I'm not going to be repotting it today. I just don't want to cause stress, unnecessary stress to the plant. So I'm just going to place it back in its pot. It is thirsty. There's no water left in the reservoir, so I'm going to give it a good dose of fertilized water. Oops. And I'm going to clean these leaves. In this instance, I'm literally just using a dry microfiber cloth because I'm just removing dust. There's no pests or anything else like that. So I'm just using this just to buff up the leaves and remove any dust. Okay, so staying with the Zebrina, this is a different Zebrina I have in my collection. This one was a rescue and it's been in perlite, but I know I've let it dry out quite a bit. So I just want to have a look at the root system. And yeah, as I expected, there's some good stuff and there's some bad stuff. So I'm just going to go through and get rid of any roots that are just like basically flat and black and deflated. There's also this leaf here which is on the way out. So again, I'm just going to say goodbye to that one. And again, you can see there's two plants in here. So I can just gently kind of pull these apart a little bit without breaking any of the good roots. And perlite is my go-to when I'm like rescuing plants. If there's ever any like issues with the roots, I will go to perlite. And I know it seems like ironic that I've got issues and I'm in perlite, but the point is that I know that I let this plant dry out a little bit too much. Plus the roots were already rehabbing. So I would expect to see some roots that were still like not fully happy, but there's still lots of really nice firm roots in here that there is enough roots that this plant will continue to go on and be happy. But I can just see this perlite is so dry, and that is just on me not keeping an eye on how like dry the perlite got basically. I think it's difficult. Like in summer, I'm so on it with my houseplant care, and I know exactly when I need to water everything, because it's pretty much like my things like semi-hydro, they're drying out every few days. Same with perlite. And I just get into a routine of just checking in with things like every few days. But obviously in wintertime, my plants in soil take a lot longer to dry out. And that sometimes means that I slightly lose touch with my other plants as well. So I'm just pulling off anything here that looks like, you can see there's some really nice healthy main roots, but the secondary roots coming off here, these tend to be a little bit skinnier and not so full, and therefore they're the ones that are gonna sort of rot first. And anything that looks too rotty, I'm just gonna take off with my snips. But you can see there's still loads of really healthy white full roots here as well. So nothing to be too worried about. It is important to mention, I always like to do when I'm doing anything with alocasia, that alocasia can be can produce a chemical which is a skin irritant. And so when you're chopping the leaves and you get the sap on your skin, or when you're messing with the roots, you really do need to wash your hands really well afterwards, probably several times, and try not to touch your face or anything like that afterwards. Or if you do have very sensitive skin, I would suggest wearing gloves. I've become quite hardened to it now, but even I every now and again forget about it and then I'm wondering why my hands are burning. So yes, be careful with that. Okay. So I've got my two plants here. Obviously they've both just got one leaf at the moment. That one is working on a new one, and I can feel that one is also working on a new one there as well. So there they are for now. I might just cut off a few little bit more of these. Right. Now the question is, am I going to put it back into perlite, or am I going to try and put it into semi-hydro? I think I'm probably for now going to put it back into some fresh perlite, and I think I do have a clear pot that I can put it in, just so that I can monitor the root system. Obviously with this one, it's quite hard for me to monitor the root system because obviously I can't see through it, and I do prefer to use clear pots, but I don't always have them to hand as and when I'm like repotting something. So I'm just going to clear this up and find myself a clear pot. Okay, I found myself a clear pot and some fresh perlite. I need a scoop. Right, placing in my two plants and just trying to make sure all the roots are going to get covered. Now, just a reminder, you can absolutely grow in perlite full time. I think I've talked a lot about how I rehab plants in perlite, or use them for use perlite for propagation as well. And you can absolutely grow plants in perlite full time. Like I'm putting this plant back into perlite and I've got no there's no real hurry to get it out of perlite. And I often get questions about, oh, when can I take my rescue blah blah out of perlite? When can I get it back into soil? And there really is like no rush on it. I mean, obviously I understand sometimes it's nice to have all your plants maybe in a similar substrate, so it makes like watering or maintenance a little bit easier. But there really is no rush. You can absolutely grow in perlite full time. All you obviously need to think about doing is fertilizing, because of course there is nothing, there's no nutrient value in this, so that you might get in like soil and other components of soil, other components you might add to your soil. So you do need to think about adding fertilizer on a regular basis. But other than that, there really is no mega rush to get it out of perlite. Right, that one's done. I'm going to fertilize that one now, and then just clean the leaves, and we'll move on to the next plant. The final little Sabrina is this one here, although I think I do have some corms to work on later. But this one is one that I've grown completely from corms, and it's now like a proper little plant, so I'm kind of really proud of this one. This one also lives in semi-hydro, and again I can see that there has been a time when I've let this dry out a little bit too much. There are some dead roots in here as well as some really good roots. But I'm not too worried about that for now, because the plant looks really happy and healthy. So I don't want to mess with the root system. And as and when that plant needs to be repotted, which isn't yet, I can remove those dead roots. But in my opinion, as long as there's like enough good roots going on, even if I can see a couple of ones that are struggling a little bit, I'm trying not to mess with the plant too much, because I have had situations in the past where I've seen like a dead root or a couple of dead roots and thought, right, I must act straight away. And in the long term, messing with the root system at that time wasn't the right thing to do, especially if the plant looks happy like this one does. If the plant looked unhappy, then I would go and investigate and probably get rid of some of those roots. But because the plant does look happy, I'm just not going to do that one. So again, with this one here, I'm just going to give it a little drink and then pop it back on the windowsill. Okay, up next, I'm going to have a little look at my Alocasia silver dragon. And I do have a little one here as well. Now, I've talked about this in the past, but I do find that the Alocasia silver dragon is much more hardy than the Alocasia dragon scale. I have had 2 dragon scales, and they have both got terrible fungal infections, which has then taken down the plant quite significantly. And this plant could absolutely get fungal infections as well, and it has got a few little fungally bits here which I'm going to cut off now, but nowhere near as bad as the dragon scale. This plant sits on the bookshelf in my bedroom, so as you can see, it gets absolutely no light from the back, which is why it's very like a plant of 2 halves. But I kind of love how the leaves all display like that, so I'm kind of not mad about it. This plant has just been in bloom, and again, Alocasia blooms are another kind of controversial subject. In my Alocasia care video that I will link down below, I do discuss that I had always cut off the blooms because again, there is mixed advice. I'm literally just pulling off little bits of brown and stuff like that while I'm talking to you. There is, you know, there was basically people saying that the blooms take energy away from the plant, and so the idea was that you cut the blooms off and that the energy would go back into making leaves, because the blooms on these plants are not anything particularly beautiful, and unless you're planning to pollinate this plant, what's the point in blooming? So I had always followed that advice, and I had always cut the blooms off. Since then, you know, there's a lot more information about how, in fact, you should let the plant bloom, because it's part of the kind of hormonal cycle that the plant needs to go into. And so if you then cut off the blooms, then they are probably more likely to produce more blooms. I still personally don't really have definitive answers on that. So basically, I did let this plant bloom recently. It had 3 blooms. I let them go fully over until they were brown, and then I cut them off, and it does look like the plant is now working on what I believe is 2 new leaves. But yeah, it's a tricky one. I need to do a bit more research on it. I'm just going to cut off this leaf here. Or do I cut off that leaf here? Just looks a little bit droopy, but it's actually like not even yellowing. No, I'm going to leave it on. It'll be fine. So yeah, I will leave that one on there for now. Now there is in here a little corm that's just literally on the surface here. I don't know if you can see that. So I'm just going to pluck that one out, and I'll show you how I propagate that a little bit later. But this dragon, silver dragon, is brilliant at producing corms. Every time I repot this plant, it produces, I get so many corms out of it. And I've grown that one completely from corms that I got from this plant, and I've also taken some to plant swaps and things like that. So yeah, it is a really good one for producing a lot of corms. Again, this one, I'm tempted to get it out. I know that, again, there are some dead roots in here, but I know there's some good roots as well. But because the plant looks happy, and my new mantra is, if it looks happy, don't mess with it. I might just gently take it out and just see. And then I'm going to lose all the pollen. Yeah. Yeah, as I suspected, there's good and bad going on. There's another corm there. Oh, I'm doing it now. Okay, not following my own advice. I'm going to go in with it and just see what's going on here. Yeah. So there is some dead roots going on for sure. And that leaf is on the way out, so I'm just going to take that one off. Oh, there's a really big corm there. Woo-woo! Always go hunting for corms when you're doing alocasia care, because they are fantastic at producing them. Right, let's see what's going on over here. Another big corm there. So yeah, I mean, the thing is, basically, I don't use self-watering pots. And so sometimes if I do let my plants dry out a little bit in between waterings, my ones in semi-hydro, the roots can start to get a bit upset. But as you can see, like, the plant still looks super happy. So it definitely can get away with having some roots that are unhappy, as long as there is enough roots to sort of maintain the plant still. In my opinion anyway. Another big corm there. Oh, and another big one. So these ones are just honestly fantastic. Now I don't have any more fine semi-hydro, which is what this one's been in previously. So I'm going to be putting it back into the coarse semi-hydro mix, and I'm going to be using one that I got. It's a new brand that I am trying out. They very kindly reached out and sent me some. So I will show you that in a minute. But a lot of these secondary roots here, you can see they're just coming away. And that is my fault for letting the plant go too dry in between waterings. If you're not using self-watering pots, which I don't, not because I don't like them, just because it's an extra cost, right? Pots are really expensive. And if you're having to provide self-watering pots for all the plants that you have in semi-hydro, then that's another absolutely massive expense for me. So I just leave a small reservoir at the bottom of a normal nursery pot. But sometimes if, I'm not like on my game, then I will let that dry out too much, and that is when the roots get upset. But you know, that's going to happen. There's still a pretty significant root system on that one there, as you can see. This one not so much. That one's obviously struggling a lot more, but then still look at the plant, like from really quite a very small root system, it is still happy. But yes, that is on me. I've been letting this plant dry out way too much. So let's get some fresh semi-hydro for this one and clear this one away. Okay, so I'm going to be using the coarse semi-hydro mix from Cyber Botanica. So it's called Cyber Hydro Mix, and this is a 5 litre bag. And I'm also going to be using this pot, which is ever so slightly smaller than this pot, but I would rather have my alocasia roots snug than swimming in too much substrate, personally. So yeah, I'm going to go in with put a little bit of this. So I much prefer a coarse semi-hydro mix to a fine semi-hydro mix. That's just like a preference that I've discovered over time. Yeah, I do find that the roots are more likely to rot a little bit in that fine mix. And again, that's probably just to do with me and my watering or lack of watering techniques in that case. But yeah, that seems to be what's working for me at the moment. And I'm always keen to try out new brands of soil mixes or semi-hydro, and yeah, this one looks like this, as you can see, nice and chunky, and it doesn't come with any built-in fertilizers like Lechuza Pond would do, but that doesn't bother me anyway because I like to use my own fertilizer anyway, so that's not a problem for me. So let's see if we can get this guy sitting a little bit more proud in the pot. A little bit more upright, perhaps. And then where am I going to add you into? Oops. That look nice? Yeah, that looks nice. Okay, and then we're just going to backfill. And I will link these guys down in the description below, so you can check them out if you wish to. They do also have lots of really nice, helpful videos and stuff over on their YouTube channel and on their socials. Okay, yeah. So I know I said I wasn't going to mess with her, but I have done it. I can't help myself. Again, pest-wise with this plant, I haven't seen anything. She did have thrips at some point a few months ago, but I haven't seen anything since then. There's just a few little crispy ends that I'm going to cut off. And then I'm actually going to give this one a shower. Just because she's a little bit dusty. So yeah, I'm going to take this one for a shower. Because I've now repotted this plant and got it sat much more upright, it now won't fit on the shelf up in my bedroom because the plant leaves are pushing it off the shelf. So I have to find somewhere new to put this plant. So I'm going to put it down here somewhere. I think I'm going to try and move a lot more of my alocasia down here. They used to be down here, and I think that's why some of them are, I'm sort of falling behind on watering with them because they're not kind of right in front of me. And so I'm going to move them down from the loft and have them down here a little bit more. So I need to find somewhere for this guy, but for now I'm just going to place it on the kitchen table and I'll have a little rearrange later on. This little one actually looks fine, so I'm not going to do anything with this one. I'm just going to give the leaves a little wipe over and polish them up a little bit. Like honestly, like if you live somewhere where I live, where the water's really hard, I do generally suggest like always showering your plants down because it's the best way to just blast off pests. But it can leave really nasty like watermarks, and so I do like to give my plants a nice sort of shine up every now and again. They do look so much better after they've had a nice shine up with just a dry microfiber cloth. And even leaves like on this silver dragon, which are really quite matte, look much more shiny afterwards. I don't generally use any sort of leaf shining products. Of course, sometimes I'll use things like peppermint oil and stuff like that for pest prevention, and that will give the leaves a little kind of sheen, if you like. But for me, just a little microfiber cloth gets them looking nice and shiny, and I think it works a treat. So that's that one. Now I am left with these corms here. So I've got 1, 2, 3, that's not really anything much, 4, 5, and a little one, 6. So I will deal with these, but I don't want them to dry out in the meantime. So I'm just going to place them in a little dish of little dish of water, just until I'm ready to deal with them. I'm also going to be taking off this brown, peeling off this brown husk. That is when your fingers can really start to burn. But yeah, if I place them in some warm water, it'll just make them easier to peel a little bit later. Right, up next is my Alocasia Sarian, and I can't remember how big this plant was when I did my Alocasia video, but I know it's grown a lot since then. This is a plant that I have grown completely from corms, and now it looks like this, which has been really exciting to grow. So this plant is a mix between the Alocasia zebrina, which obviously I started the video with, and the Alocasia michelitziana, which I also have down here, and I'll show you in a moment. So it's got these kind of zebra stems, but they're kind of red in color, which is amazing. And then it's got the kind of veination from the michelitziana, but they're shiny rather than velvet leaves. So it's a real combo between the two. And yeah, I'll put in a picture of what this plant looked like. I think it was 18 months ago when it was teeny tiny. And it just had an amazing, amazing summer up in my loft. Natural sunlight that comes into that room through 2 big south-facing skylights. No additional grow lights. It was just natural light, and it just went bananas. I'm not going to be repotting this plant today because I did repot it not that long ago, maybe 6 months or so ago, and it's happy. I don't want to mess with it. But it has been struggling on and off with spider mites. So I am going to be using Diatomaceous Earth today to treat for spider mites on several of my Alocasia. So Diatomaceous Earth, it's basically, it's a natural, completely natural product. And it's actually food grade, so you can dilute this in water and drink it, which is kind of mad. But basically it is still like a very fine dust, so you should be careful about inhalation, and ideally I would be wearing a mask, but I cannot find one for the life of me, which shows you how long kind of COVID was in the past now, that we used to be swimming in masks and now I can't find one. But yes, ideally you want to be using a mask on this. I'm just going to try and be really, really careful. And I'm going to be using a little paintbrush, and I'm just going to be basically putting it down into like the nooks and crannies, and then also kind of trying to kind of spread it on the backs of the leaves. Now I've had a quick look this morning and I can't really see anything obvious, but there are a few little markings on the leaves, like little dots and stuff like that, and that normally tells me that there might be a few spider mites still hanging around. I have been showering this plant regularly just because I know that there has been spider mites, and it's a real pain because basically I never really struggle with spider mites in my collection, and then I happened to order 2 Alocasia from an online seller. I'm not going to say who it is. I'm not here to like badmouth anybody. It happens. They arrived with spider mites, and I hadn't realized. My daughter was like playing with the box that they came in, making a den, and I think when she was like chucking around the box and stuff, the spider mites that were potentially in that box just got out, you know, and spread to the collection, because I noticed them. Oops, I've just knocked over my Diatomaceous Earth, never mind. I noticed that they were on the plants quite quickly, but by which point she'd already been playing with the box for some time. And yeah, annoying, but one of those things, it happens. Right, seeing as I've got some here on the counter, I'm just going to get my paintbrush on here, and I'm just going to be putting it onto the backs of the leaves. Now obviously it is like a powder, so it is quite difficult to get it to stay on, and it's going to be quite messy as well, so I'm going to have to put these somewhere just while they're kind of drying off. So basically it works by, when the pests come into contact with them, it damages their exoskeleton and then also absorbs any moisture in the pest, so they dehydrate as well. So I'm just getting it down into all these nooks and crannies down here. And then obviously I'm going to wash my hands really, really well afterwards. But this is like, if you're looking for a non-toxic, I mean, like I say, you do have to be careful with inhalation and obviously wash your hands afterwards. But essentially it's non-toxic. And you know, it's not a chemical pesticide if you're looking for other ways to treat for pests which aren't toxic. And this works the same for thrips, mealybugs, scale, so really works on all of them. Okay, so while I had the Diatomaceous Earth out, I've actually treated 3 of my Alocasias with it. Now, these are all ones, like I said, I can't actually see any spider mites currently, but I know they have all had them. And spider mites are one of those things that, like, if you don't kind of keep an eye on things, they can just come back. And they do particularly love Alocasia. So I just want to prepare my plants as best as I possibly can going into the spring months. Like, I don't want to be starting spring out already dealing with pests, because obviously as you open the windows and stuff, they're more likely to come in through the window. And also because spider mites are just something I haven't had to deal with very much. And so I'm like, oh, come on. So I have put the Diatomaceous Earth on my Alocasia Tharian, my Alocasia Michelitziana, and also my Alocasia Yucatan Princess, which is this one here. Again, haven't seen anything on them, but because they all live in quite close quarters, I just want to make sure. And now that I've put the Diatomaceous Earth on there, I'm just going to let it sit on there for maybe an hour or so, and then I'm going to slightly brush it off with the microfiber cloth, just so that it's not going to drop everywhere as I move the plants. And then I'll keep an eye on it, because there should be some residue left behind. Like, ideally I would just leave it in, like, I put it down into clumps and all the nooks and crannies, and that's absolutely fine. But obviously it doesn't just kind of stay on the leaves because it is a powder. So I'm just going to rub that in. I have done that with an Alocasia at a client's house, and it's worked really, really well. And spider mites have gone. So yes, again, I will link that Diatomaceous Earth down in the description below. I just got it off Amazon. And you can obviously, to do your own research, make sure that obviously you are in a well ventilated area. I've had the back door open. Ideally you want to be wearing a mask, and yeah, just follow the instructions obviously to use it. But it's a really nice non-toxic way. It's just a little bit messy, so it's not as easy as kind of just like spraying something onto the leaves, but at the same time it is very effective and it's non-toxic. So there we go. Yeah, I'm going to let these ones sit on here for a little bit. I'm going to put these to a side so we can move on with the next plant. Oh yeah, just to say, this is the Alocasia Michelitziana that I have at the moment. She is making a bit of a comeback because she was very, very full and beautiful, and then she had a bit of a meltdown, lost almost, well, actually all of her leaves, and now she's growing back again. So yeah, she will hopefully have a really good summer and be able to make a full comeback. And you can see there's lots of really nice, lovely roots in that pot. So everything looks really happy and healthy in there, and I've got no need to repot that one. And then this is the Yucatan Princess. It's not one of my favorite ones. Like, the color of the leaves themselves are not particularly anything to kind of write home about, but she's a very easy Alocasia, and she has got these nice sort of rhubarb like stems on her, which are nice. And she's just been really easy. I got her like in the bargain basement section of like B&Q, and she probably needs a repot at some point, but again, for the moment she is happy, so I'm not going to be doing anything else with her. I really just wanted to do the pest treatment on those two. Next up is my Alocasia Cuprea. She's definitely not looking her best at the moment, but then she kind of did this to me last winter, where she didn't drop any leaves, but she just stopped growing, and that was her sort of dormancy basically, and that's what she's doing for me now. In fact, she's actually flowering, which is okay. So we've got one flower here. These are what the flowers look like before they open. I've got another flower just here, and this feels like a flower that's coming in here as well. I'd obviously much rather that those were leaves, but they're not, and that's okay. So with this one, I've not noticed any pests on her. She's been really good for me actually, with really never having pests. You know, I never like to say never, because I feel like I'm always then sort of tempting fate. But yeah, for today I'm just going to give her leaves a nice shine up, and then give her a good drink with some fertilizer. Again, I have showered this one recently, so you do get those watermarks on the leaves, and so it is nice every now and then just to give the leaves a nice shine up and get them looking lovely again, because one of the nicest things about the cuprea is just these like shiny leaves that look like abs. So it is nice to give them a buff. Obviously just be careful because these leaves are quite delicate and will rip if you're sort of too firm with them. But hopefully I can get her, like once the spring kicks back in, she will start to put out leaves again and start growing nicely for me again, because yeah, at the moment she's just looking, she looks fine, but she's just looking a bit spread out, and yeah, I definitely like some more leaves. I need to buy some of actually some more shorter supports, because the support that I've got over there is just going to be too big for this one, so that I can, or what I might do is just get her, yeah, okay, I might just tie her two plants together just to get it looking a little bit nicer. Snips. I do have this wooden stake I could use. Yeah, I think for now. She does look a little bit more nicely displayed like that. And as I say, I'm just going to let her go with these flowers. I am trying this leaving the flowers thing. And like I say, like, it doesn't really make too much difference to me. They're not particularly anything to look at, but at the same time, I'm willing to just see if it makes a difference letting the plant flower. I've definitely never lost a plant because I've cut the flowers off. And yeah, I'm always looking to try different things. And so yeah, we're leaving the flowers on. I'm going to give her a nice drink. Still got some of my fertilized water here. You will notice that all of my Alocasia are in semi-hydro or perlite. I just personally find that works a lot better for them. And yeah, I haven't grown Alocasia in soil now for probably 2 years. I just find it works a lot better. And like I say, like, you've got all, like, I'm not going through care requirements today specifically. I'm literally just doing what I would do off camera, which is care for my plants, but just kind of talking through at the same time. But yeah, you do want to know a little bit more about exactly what they like in terms of light and watering and substrate and all those kind of things. Like I said, I will link that other video down below. I'm just going to tip out some of this water. A little bit too much, and then I'll place her back in her spot. The next one on the list is this one. This is a really nice easy one. This is the Alocasia cucullata. I bought this as a small plant and it's still quite small. It's not one that's like sized up massively for me, but I have had to cut it back a few times. It did get a fungal infection maybe a year ago. So yeah, this is one that is also, again, in the coarse semi-hydro mix. And you can see there's lots of nice, tasty green roots in there. So the plant is really nice and happy. And I just found this plant was drying out really quickly. So I did just put some moss on the top, which encourages some of these top roots just to grow into that moss, and then stopping them from getting too dry. Of course, the moss does dry out, but yeah, I'm just going to give that a nice soak now. And other than that, I'm just going to give the leaves a little clean again, just a little buff. And this one's doesn't need anything else doing to it. No pests, no repotting, which is nice and easy. Sometimes we need that, don't we? Okay, that's all there was to do with that one. Right, I've got a few little small alocasias now to deal with, and this is a really sad one because basically this little Alocasia cuprea that I grew from corms was doing really well, and then I just let the plant dry out too much, and now it's really struggling to make a comeback. So the corm is still nice and firm. It's only got this one little tiny root, so it's really struggling to sustain this leaf. So I think what I'm probably going to do is I can find out where the new leaf would be coming in, where the bump is here. I'm just going to cut above this there, and this leaf is not looking great either, so I'm going to do the same on this side. A couple of those roots not looking great, but as long as the corm is still firm, there's still good chance that it will be absolutely fine. So what I'm going to do now is, this is still some nice damp perlite here. I'm going to reinsert these back into this perlite, and I'm actually going to put it into a, it needs more humidity basically, so I'm going to put it into a Ziploc bag like I have with these ones here, but I need to have a look at those ones because I think there's some things going on with them. But yeah, those are the cupreas. There's just literally no point in hanging on to these leaves that are just going to die off, so I've put that in there for now. I need to get that into a Ziploc bag, but let's also see what's going on with these ones. Oh, there's another corm here. What's going on with this corm? Yeah, okay, it's still firm, so I'll put that one back in there as well. Okay, let's see what's going on with these. I'm really sad about this. I got this from a plant swap. This is the, actually it's doing much better. This is the Alocasia aslanii, and I really love this plant and it was doing brilliantly, and then once again I let it dry out too much. I'm just going to snip that bit there because that's not needed, but actually it's looking much better. I've got this in a mix of moss and perlite, but generally I just use perlite. Now I'm not sure what's going on with this one in here. This was a sinuata, I believe, and again just a corm that I got from, okay, we've got nice roots going on here, so it's just this top bit that's, I can just remove this bit. This is an old leaf that's just died off. If you can hear any noise, my dog is going bananas in the background. He's obviously having like the zoomies. So I don't know if you can hear that or not. Is there any other corm in here, or was it just the one? Anything else in here? No, just the one. Okay. So I'm going to plant that back in there, put this back round here. So yeah, as I say, normally for corm propagation, I will just use perlite, but I think what happened here was these particular ones kept drying out, so I've added a little bit of moss just for extra humidity. And again, like, I might have some glass cloches coming available because I'm going to be, I have some that are in glass cloches that are now ready to be potted up. So I'm just going to put these three here to the side because I may well have some glass cloches available. And let's just, yeah, the main thing with corm propagation is you do not want whatever substrate you're using to dry out, and that's why I don't really like using that shallow water method, because for me the water always just evaporates and I'm left with some really dry corms. So I do find perlite is the best for me, but you can just do it in like a Tupperware, but you basically just want to keep that humidity in. And in this case, I had it in my little IKEA greenhouse, but that still obviously dries out quicker than 100% humidity, which you would have inside like a Ziploc bag or a glass cloche. So yeah, that's what the plan is for you guys. You're going to make a comeback. It's going to be okay. And I'll get those glass cloches down in a minute. The only other one I've got left here to do is this one. And this one is another one that's kind of always struggling on and off with spider mites. But because it's a small plant, I just keep on top of it by running it under the tap, just blasting it with the tap. And again, right now, I actually can't see anything. I am going to add a little bit more semi-hydro just into the top of that, because it is getting a little bit, could do with a top up. And I'm just going to run it under the sink. But I do find that these kind of alocasias are the absolute worst for spider mites. They just love them. I mean, my client's got a really big one of these and it's just absolute nightmare. Red spider mites, white spider mites, all the spider mites. So yeah, I'm just going to blast this one under the tap, give it some fertilizer, and then it can go back upstairs. Okay, and here are some corms that I've been growing inside these glass cabinets, and you can see this is why the humidity is so important. If you can see all these roots going completely bananas here, and even though they're outside the perlite, because the humidity within this glass cloche is so high, like you can see all the condensation on the glass here, these roots don't die. And so yeah, that is why it is so important, because the perlite basically needs to stay consistently moist. You don't want it like drying out. You don't want it kind of really too saturated either. So once it's in there and I've watered it, I don't really need to water it that often, like hardly ever at all. But in here I've got one little Zebrina, one Micholitziana, and probably another Micholitziana by the looks of it, although I can't tell that one because it hasn't fully grown out yet. And then in this cloche here, I have 3 little Micholitziana babies. And again, you can just see like how successful the glass cloche works. So what we're going to do is we're going to get these 3 babies that are very, very needy into this glass cloche, and those 3 will fit in there quite nicely. Oops, 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 like that. And I'll take that up to the loft where it's nice and bright. It's also out of the way because obviously it doesn't look particularly attractive when they're kind of in that like growing stage. And then these 3 are ready to be moved along. Oh, there's a couple of corms in there that aren't ready to be moved along. Interesting. Okay. Okay. So we've got one there. We've got one there. And we've still got some others that are not ready. Okay. Okie dokie dokie. Okay. So you can go back into your perlite for now. Okay, and what's going on in here? We have this little Zebrina that is ready. So that's another Micholitziana there that is ready. This one isn't ready yet. So you can go back in with your buddies here. Oh, I need to find you some space now. Hang on. I have to rearrange this. Okay, those ones can go back into that dome. And yeah, I just use like these are like those you get from those goo pudding pots. You can use obviously little tiny pots. Sometimes I just use, if I've got loads of corms, I'll use like Tupperware. So yeah, it depends really. But that's a very, look at the size of that corm. That is a mega one. And I'm going to transfer these ones now to semi-hydro. Like I say, I could absolutely leave them in perlite. Like they're happy in perlite, there's no drama there, but for now I'm just going to transfer them up to some semi-hydro. And I will use the Cybertanica again, and then I'll update you on how they get on in there. And I've got one Zabrina. No, I don't really want to plant you on your own. So what am I going to do with you? I could pop you into that one over there. I think that's what I'll do. So first, I'll find myself a little pot for these guys. Just here. Put a little bit of the semi-hydro into the bottom. Add in my corms. I don't worry about removing the perlite because I'm not worried about perlite staying on there at all. If I was transferring from moss into soil or semi-hydro, then I would absolutely be removing the soil. Similarly, if I was transferring between soil and semi-hydro, I would try and remove as much of the soil as possible because you don't want organic matter on there because that will encourage rot. But perlite, I'm not worried about at all. Now, bearing in mind these corms have just come out of like 100% humidity, I do now need to be very, very careful with one, trying to keep them humid. So I may just place like a plastic bag over the top for a few days and then slowly start to like remove that plastic bag, and also place them inside my small IKEA greenhouse. So I don't weather strip that greenhouse, so it's not 100% humidity in there, but it is more humid than just the rest of the room. So yeah, that's those little babies planted up. I need to obviously give those a water and find them a little pot to sit in as well. Cool, so that's done. Let's find you. Could you fit in there for now? Oh yeah, okay, let's just clean that out of there. I've just cleaned that out. That had the perlite in it. And I'm just going to use that as a little drip tray, if you will, for now. Give it a little drink. Let that soak through. And then, as I say, I'm probably just going to, this is the bag that I was using before for the other ones. Just place that around there. Just like that. And then I'll slowly start to take that bag off over the next like week, and that should be fine then to then sort of acclimate to room humidity. If you sort of do it in one massive go, especially when they're becoming from like literally 100% humidity in a glass dome, one, the substrate will just dry out quicker and then you risk upsetting the roots. And the other thing is that, yeah, the leaves will just like be like, oh, you may lose leaves that way as well. Now I'm just going to add this one into my smaller Sabrina over here. Right, it can be quite difficult when there is not really a gap in semi-hydro. Like if it was soil, you can like quite easily make a little hole for it, and it's much harder to do. Oh, there's a corm in there, but I'm not taking it out right now. Much harder to do when it's in semi-hydro. And what I'll need to do, because obviously, again, this one's come from 100% humidity, I'll just need to make sure that the top of the semi-hydro, because it's obviously quite close to the top, doesn't dry out. I might just add in some of the coarse semi-hydro just to top it up here. There she is in there. Hopefully she will be okay in there. I'm going to risk it for a biscuit and just see how she gets on coming straight out of 100% humidity onto a north-facing window. But we will see. Sometimes you've got to try these things. So I'll just pop her back now. Okay, so what I want to do now before I forget is to put our silver dragon corms into perlite and get them propagating. So I've just had them soaking in this warm water here, and then I like to remove as much of this brown husk as possible. Now sometimes it comes off easier than others, and so don't beat yourself up too much, and it will often go brown again after it's been like in a humid environment for some time. But just take off what you can, and like I say, sometimes it comes off easier than others. And also, as I mentioned earlier, please wash your hands. Don't touch your face or your eyes after doing this, because it will burn them. I don't want to sound too dramatic. I'm not being like, don't want to be dismissive about it, but I also don't want to be too dramatic about it. But yeah, it's just wash your hands and you'll be absolutely fine. But yeah, so just scratching this one off like that. Can you see? So now it's a nice little nugget. And I know sometimes people struggle to know what's the top and the bottom, what's the difference between the top and the bottom, or which way to plant your corms. And it's kind of a bit like any bulb, isn't it? Like sometimes it's easier to tell than others. Like both ends are pointy, but the bottom part generally has like a bit of a longer tail on it, and the top of the corm tends to have a more pronounced point to it. So, sorry, I've got wash my hands a bit there. Wash this one. So if you can see there, that's the longer bit at the bottom. So you're going to plant it that way down. This is a very pronounced centralized point on the top, and that's going to be the top. So you're going to plant it that way around. And there are a few different ways that people propagate corms. As I say, like you don't have to take them out of the plant. You can absolutely leave them in there and they will in time propagate on their own. It's just if you remove them, they tend to propagate a little bit quicker. And then you can like create new plants, or you can add them back into the same plant. It's obviously completely up to you. You can take them to plant swaps. Yeah, there's loads of different things that you can do with them, but for the most part I either make duplicate plants and then will grow on a small plant, and then once that small plant grows on, I might keep it as a small plant, or I might then add it back into the main plant once it's kind of established on its own as a plant. Yeah, just depends really. And I am in the process of, well, we are in the process of moving house, which should be happening in the next month or so. So prepare yourself for definitely a moving vlog, and then definitely a new houseplant tour once we are in the house and I've decided where I want to put everything, which is literally my favorite plant. My favorite thing to do is basically just like pottering with my plants, but pottering in a new space when you're getting used to like new light levels and all that kind of thing is so exciting. And I've got a south-facing kitchen, which is the dream, because most it's a kitchen diner area, which is kind of what I've always wanted, and it's where I spend most of my time. But this kitchen is north facing, and so I have to be kind of careful with what kind of plants I put in here. And so to have a south-facing kitchen diner is just going to be really exciting. And I have to think about new ways in which I'm going to display all my plants, shelving, all of that stuff. So it's going to be a bit of a process for sure, but I'm looking forward to it. I just hope that I manage to move all of my plants and they stay in one piece, that I don't manage to break them off or anything. My plan is still to hire a separate van that I will drive just for my plants, which I know might sound completely bananas. Like a couple of the big ones, like my Dracaena back here and my big Monstera, might go in the moving truck. I just have to think about how to wrap them. But like if I was to break a leaf, then I can only like be annoyed at myself. But if some like a removal company breaks it, then I would be like annoyed at myself with that, because I'd be like, oh, I would have taken better care of it. Yeah, so we'll see what happens. It's all starting to get organized, but part of that whole thing of moving is I've been really kind of streamlining my collection a lot more. I don't want to take any plants with me to the new house that I don't absolutely love. So I have been getting rid of some plants, whether that means like actually binning them, or like if they're sad, not if they're healthy, and combining plants together, giving some away. I just don't want to take any plants with me that I don't want to care for in this house, because why? It means I'm not really going to want to care for them in the next house either. And yeah, so I've been quite busy doing that, and just want to get to the point with my collection where I've got all the plants that I know work really well for me and my care requirements, that work for me and my lifestyle, that, you know, that I can just enjoy really, and not ones that are giving me grief all the time. Like, of course things are going to come up, you're going to get pests along the way, you can't really predict for that kind of thing, but you know, also you get to a point where you're like, you've reached your limit in terms of how many plants you feel like you can look after, given all the other things that are going on in your life, like work and family commitments and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, like 150 is really my max when it comes to plants. So I'll be interested to count them again once I get everything packed up and see where I'm at, because there's definitely a few that I would like to add once I've got a really nice, stunning space with lots of nice natural light. So we'll see. Anyway, so yeah, you can see that I've basically peeled off that as much of that brown husk as I can basically be bothered to. And then I'm just going to clean out this dish, and we'll use this dish and add some perlite in here. I'm going to wash my hands as well. I'm not going to lie, I can definitely feel that my skin is a little bit irritated after doing that. And I've washed my hands. I will just keep washing them. And I know I'll be fine because I have been previously, but yeah, I can definitely feel that my skin's a little bit irritated because I've been doing so much work with alocasia. So yeah, probably gloves would be best. So literally I've just put a little bit of perlite in the bottom there. Then I'm going to add in my corms, If I obviously had a lot of corms, I would obviously use a bigger container, but this should be fine because there's only like 5 of them. Add a little bit more in, just so they're poking out the top like that. And then I'm going to just damp the perlite with some fertilized water. And then I need to get that into, I don't think I've got any more glass cloches, so I'm probably just for now either put a little bit of cling film on the top of that or put it into a plastic bag for now. I just had to take some antihistamine because my hands were really starting to burn. So I think probably if I'd done like any one of those activities singly, it would have been fine. But because I was doing so much with alocasia, like cutting them up, dealing with the roots, dealing with the corms, it just got too much. And my hands were really starting to itch and burn. So yes, probably wearing gloves if you are doing any of those activities extensively, then that would be a good idea. My hands feel fine now, the Piriton has kicked in, but yes. I do have a few other small alocasias like this Heterophylla. This is what's left of my dragon scale after it had a meltdown. I've got this little stingray, I've got a few other little ones, but they're all absolutely fine at the moment. And I've got through most of what I wanted to get done today, which I'm really pleased about. So yeah, I hope you have enjoyed this video. Like I say, it's not been like a tour or a guide to how I look after my alocasia, more just like the kind of stuff that I do off camera, and just thought I would take you along and talk through it at the same time in case it was useful for you as well. Please let me know in the comments any questions that you might have, or any kind of pest tips or anything like that you might have for your alocasia, because it might be useful for me or somebody else as well. And I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. Bye.